Welcome back to the channel. This is Nasa Strad. If you're seeing this channel for the first time, thank you for stopping by. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you. So today on the channel, we'll be learning how to make this multiple keyhole top with a princess dart, a back waist, and a puffy sleeve. If it's something you're interested in, keep watching. If you're yet to subscribe, do well to subscribe to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up and let's get right into this. So to start with, I have my pattern. I've gone ahead to mark out my vertical lines. So on the top here, I'm going ahead to mark a neck width of 3.5 inches and a neck depth of 4 inches. So we're going to draft out the front of this. I have my shoulder to the bust, my shoulder to the under bust, shoulder to waist, and the length I need this to end. So I'm going ahead to connect my neckline with my curve row like so. You can use any neckline of your choice, and after that I'll go ahead and mark half of my shoulder measurement at this point, and then I will mark my armhole depth. So your armhole depth is gotten by dividing your round bust by 6 and adding 1.5 inches to that. So at that point, I'm going to make a vertical line coming down, okay, and also I'm going to make a horizontal line going this other way. All right, so we have that. I'm going ahead to label that the chest line. Now on that line where I marked my armhole depth, I will go and come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant, and I will just indicate that point right there. Okay, after that I'll go ahead and connect it to the neck width which I have. All right, so we have that. Now to get our armhole curve, go ahead and take the measurements you have there remaining. So I'll just fold my tape to get the midpoint of that point. I'll make a mark at that point. All right, and at the point where I made a mark, I'll go in by 1/2 inch and I'll mark it also. Then on my chest line, I'll go ahead and mark 1/4 of my round bust measurement and connect the points I have together. Okay, so after doing that, we'll be marking our dart. Now we're working with a princess dart for this top. That's because of the designs around the neckline. Okay, so to do this, go ahead and take your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. Now on the bust point, you're going to take the exact measurement. So for me, I'm working with 4 inches for my nipple to nipple measurement. I went ahead to mark 4 inches at the bust point. Now at the under bust, I minus 1/2 inch from that so that I can get that princess dart curve. So at the under bust, at the waist, and at the full length, you're going to minus 1/2 inch from your usual nipple to nipple measurement. Okay, so you can see I've connected that line together, and I'm going ahead to connect it to the midpoint of my armhole like so. All right, so the next thing we want to get is the curve for the bust area. So what we're going to do is that from the under bust area, I'll go out by 2 inches. So if you're on a smaller bust size, you can go out by 1.5 inches. I'm going to do the same thing at the waist area. Okay, now for this part, this type of princess that I'm doing, I'm not going to connect this to the full length. I will just make a slanted line to meet the line I had before like so. Okay, so see how this is coming out. Now I'm going to use my curve rule to create a curve from the under bust line to the bust point using my rule. So just watch how I'm connecting this. All right, so we have that down. Now on the armhole line, I will go down by 2 inches at that point. From the midpoint of my armhole, I'll go down by 2 inches and I will make a mark there. Then I'll just connect it to meet the bust point at this other point also. Now if you go ahead and cut this out, you'll notice that the side piece will be shorter than what you have at the middle. So that 2 inches we used in coming down at the armhole area, we are going to extend it outwards. Okay, so you're going to place your tape rule. Okay, you place your tape rule at that point, the last line you marked. You go outward by 2 inches and you make a point. Now this is so that by the time we cut out our fabric and start joining, one will not be short and the other will not be longer. Okay, that's the essence of this. So you just connect that in a slanted line like so. So that means we're going to adjust our armhole. I'm just marking this. Okay, so you're going to just adjust the armhole so that everything fits. We're creating a new armhole right now, so by the time we add our body measurements, we'll make adjustment to that. So we'll go ahead and add our horizontal measurement. Now at the bust point, go ahead and add your round bust divided by 4. Then you add that allowance intake you have at the top, and then your seam allowance. So I'm using a seam allowance of 1.5 inches for this top, and I just went ahead to just make that mark. Now on the waist area also, you want to do the same thing. Take your round waist divided by 4, add that intake at the waist, which is 2 inches, and then add your seam allowance of 1.5 inches. All right, then you repeat the same thing at the full length, which is the hip area. Okay, so at the full length of your top, you want to take your hip measurement divided by 4 plus your seam allowance. Now you can use a seam allowance of 2 inches, all right, but it depends on 1 inches works perfectly, especially if you know how to stitch and not add like excess while stitching your seams together. It's going to give it a perfect, to make it look nice, and inside of your dress will not be puffy. And I just went ahead to just connect the points I've marked together. All right, so we have our front pattern down. This is what the front looks like I said, you can have any neckline you want, anything, however you want your neckline to appear. Now you can also do any form of princess that you know. So from the waist area, I went down by 4.5 inches, and I'm going to just make a connection from that point where I went down by 4.5 inches to the end of my waist, to the end of the top. That's the length, which gives me that's my box effect. Now you can start, if you notice from the thumbnail, the one on the thumbnail, the box effect started from the waist itself. So you can just come down from by 1 inch from the waist and then connect it to the full length of your top. I made use of a curve rule for this. You can make use of a straight rule. It depends on the kind of curve you want at the end. So I wanted mine to be a little bit rounded at the edges. So if you want yours to be straight, you can go ahead to do that. And I just went in with my scissors to take it out. So just watch closely so you know how I'm cutting this out. Okay, so this is what we have for the front piece of art. You can see that it is matching perfectly. It is matching in length, right? You can see what we're talking about. By the time we stitch this together, we're not going to have one shortened. So we're going to cut this on fold. That is for the center front to be cut on fold, and then for the side we're going to have 2 pieces of that. Now going over to the back, I've gone ahead to also mark my vertical lines, and I marked a zip allowance of 1.5 inches. You can also use 1 inch for your zip allowance. Okay, so I just use 1.5 for mine. Now on the starting point, I'm going ahead to mark the same neck width I had in front, which is 3.5 inches, and then for the back I'm using a neck depth of 2 inches, and I'm going ahead to just connect those points together like so. Now for the back, while taking your measurement, ensure to take it from after your zip allowance line, right? And then I'm going ahead to mark half of the shoulder measurement. Now note that whatever you're using for your front, it should also align with that of the back, because while you're joining this together, you don't want one to be longer than the other, right? And then I came down by 8 inches, which is the armhole depth for me, and I'm going to just make the connections just like I did in front. So The next thing we're going to do is to come down by 1 inch from that point and just create our shoulder slant into the neckline. Then we're going to get the midpoint of that point just like we did for the front, mark it down. In this case, we're not coming in by half of an inch. We're just simply going to mark quarter of the round bust measurement on our chest line, and then use our curve rule to just create a curve like so. All right, now for the darts of the back, we're going to take our nipple to nipple measurement. In this case, I'm working with a nipple to nipple measurement of 8 inches, so divided by 2 I have 4. I'm going ahead to mark that at the bust points, the chest line, the under bust, the waist, and then the full length. So I didn't take out anything from this. Remember, the back doesn't have the bust, so the bust only appears in front. That's why it needs that curve. Now at the chest line, I'll go down by 1 inch because I don't want my dart to get to that point. All right, so if you want your dart to get to your chest line, you can absolutely do that. I went down by 1 inch and I connected it into the dark line, so you can see what we have. Now on the waist, I'll be going in and out on both sides of my dart by half of an inch. I will just mark it on the right and on the left side. Then I'm going to connect it to the top of my dart with my rule like so. Okay, and I will also connect the other point to the top of my dart also. Now in this case, I don't want my dart to get to the end, that's to the length in front, so I'll go all by 2 inches from the end and I'll connect my dart to that point. So my dart is not going to get to the full length of the back piece. I just went all by 2 inches and I'm connecting my dart to meet those points, so you can see what the back looks like, right? This is what it looks like at the back. Now we're going to go on and take our body measurement. Remember, we're using a seam allowance of 1.5 inches. I just marked my chest line, added 1.5 inches to that. At the waist area also, I'm going to take quarter of my round waist, take the dart intake I have there, and then I will add my seam allowance. I'll do the same thing around the hip, that's the full length. Take the round hip divided by 4, and then I will add my dart intake. Okay, so it's important for your allowances to be okay, right? Ensure that you cross check them. It's better you cross check them on your pattern and cut it accurately on your fabric. So I just connected those points together. So this is what we have for the back. All right, now for the waist of the back, on our zip allowance line, we're going in by half of an inch. Remember, I said I marked out 1.5 inches at that point. So at the waist area, we go in by ½ inch. We are going to connect this to the top and then to the bottom. Now this is to avoid any form of zip bulge at the end of making our top. You don't want your zip to have this puffy feel at the back. It doesn't make your clothes look nice. Okay, so I just curved out that part. Now for the back waist of the back, I want the back to be shorter than the front. Okay, so first I'm going ahead to mark 4.5 inches just like I did for the front, because the sides of the front and the back, they need to align perfectly. But for the center front of the back, I want it to be a bit shorter. If you've seen this top, the center back of the top is actually shorter than what we have in front, though some persons usually modify theirs. So I was trying to determine where I wanted this to end, like bring it up, take it down. Okay, so you can determine where you want it to end. If you also want the back of your top to be longer, you can absolutely do that. So what I did was that from the base of my top, I just went up by 3 inches, and then I'm just using my curve rule to connect from that 4 inches point. I came down at the side front of the waist to the center front where I went up by 3 inches. So you can see, like I said, you can use any curve you want to use for your back's effect. You can see now the sides of the front and the back are matching. That is what you should have for yours also. While we have the center front longer, the sides should be matching, because you know you have to stitch it together. So I'm placing the front and back together like so, so you can see how it looks. The back is short while we have the front longer. So we have our pattern for the back. We'll just go ahead to cut this out. So this is what we have for the back. You can see how nice this look. This is our patterns. The next thing we're going to do is to place this on our fabrics and cut it out. So I've gone ahead to cut it out on my fabric. I added half of an inch at the shoulder point and also around the dart areas of my front. As you can see, apart from those points, I didn't add any other allowance. So go ahead and add half of an inch to those points, and I'm just making notches at my underbust to indicate those points. All right, it's important. Now for the back, I only added allowance to the shoulder, which will serve as my joining allowance. So I've gone ahead to iron my interfacing to my front piece, and I also iron my wording to them. This is the center front. I just ironed it. You can see how this looks. And then to the side front also, I ironed my interfacing to both my main piece and my lining. Then for the back piece, I didn't iron my interfacing to this. You can also iron interfacing to your back piece to give it more firmness. So what we want to do now, I'm going to show you how I carved that down. So if you check out what we have for the piece which I've cut out and our pattern, you'll notice that the curve around the bust areas are different. Okay, so the one of the pattern has like this sharp edge, and for bustiers, you're not supposed to have this kind of thing. So just go ahead and place your curve room at that point where you have that sharp edge, and then you cut it out. Okay, after cutting it out, you can see the smooth edge it has. This is what you should have for your bustiers. So now we're going to start stitching this down. So to start off, I'm going to use my main piece. I'll be placing my piece right side to right side, starting with the main piece. I will just place them where they're supposed to fit in. Go ahead and stitch it down by half of an inch. So you're going to placing them like this, and then you stitch it. So start your stitching from the base. Okay, you're going to repeat the same thing also for the lining of the front. Align them to the part where they're supposed to sit, right side to right side, and go ahead and stitch it down. Now for the back, what we're going to do is that we're going to place the lining to the main piece, right side of lining to the right side of your main piece. You go ahead and then stitch it down. You're going to stitch around the necklines, the zip allowance areas, the sides, and then the bottom, leaving the armhole and the shoulder areas open. So don't forget to indicate your zip area. So this is what the front looks like after I finished. I've joined it together and I went ahead to iron my seam open. So you can see how the bust area is looking. It looks nice already. And then for the lining also, I did the same thing. Like I said, I joined it together, ironed my seam open. You can see the bust of the lining is also giving that effect. Okay, so what we're going to do is to align the lining together. Now we want to join our piece together. You're going to ensure that they are placed properly. So the one thing you want to note is that while you're stitching the neckline of your front, just pin the midpoint together of your lining and your main piece, and other parts will come in place. So stitch the necklines, the sides, and then the under, that's the ends, and then leave the shoulder and armhole open. Now for the back, I've gone ahead to do that, and I gave it a very good press after I finished doing that. So this is what the back piece looks like. This is what it looks like. So we want to work on the dart for the back. Now to do this, just you have to take the measurement of your dart length which you had on your pattern. So for this pattern, I had 13.5 inches for the length of my pattern. So I just measured that out. You're going to also measure that out on your fabric. Okay, that's for the back piece before you stitch in your dart. Now the reason for ensuring all this is so that you have an accurate dart by the time you finish. So I just went on to mark my shoulder to waist point, and then at that point I'm going to indicate my dart length. my dart point. Now remember that we took in half of an inch at the waist area, okay, while drafting this out for our zip. Okay, so go ahead and also put that in place. Take the length of your dart. After that, you want to rule a line. Okay, you just want to make a line at that point. Okay, and at the waist point, just like we did for the pattern, go ahead and take half of an inch on both sides on the waist. And after doing that, you're going to just pick your fabric this way, go over to the machine, and then stitch down your dart. So remember, the dart is not getting to the end of this, so just go ahead and do that and repeat the same thing for the other side. So this is what the front looks like after I finish. I've done this over with the lining. I've closed the side, I've closed the bottom. You can see the bust area, and I just went ahead to mark my dart, the distance between the dart, and I had 8 inches. So after stitching, ensure you have that. The only way you can ensure you have that is by exhausting the allowance you added to this. Okay, that half inch you added to the dart areas of the front, ensure you exhaust that while you're stitching your piece together. Okay, so this is what I have it looking like. This is the front. You can see how neat this is inside. So for the back, I've also gone ahead to place my dart like I said. It looks nice. So you can see the half-inch intake we took for the dart at the midpoint. You can see the effect. You can see that space in between. It is because of that intake we took at that point. See how neat this dress is coming in. So we're going to place a zip on the back piece. Just go ahead and stitch your zip down at the back piece to put them together. All right, just place your zip together. So while placing your zip, ensure you follow the allowance you added for your zip. Okay, it's important to follow the allowance so that it's going to have that curve. All right, now for the front, we're going to mark our keyhole design. So I'm using this the base of this container I have here for the circle, and I'm going to use a pen because this fabric I don't want so you're going to use either a pen or a pencil. You don't want to use a fabric that leaves you use something that like a pen that leaves marks on fabrics. Okay, so I just made a hole there. I came down by 1.5 inches at the midpoint of my top, and then I just circled it round using the base of the container. And then after that, I went away from that first circle by 1.5 inches, and I marked the second one also. So I'm going to do the same thing to the side. In total, I'm going to have 5 circles around this. Now you can decide to modify this and not just have the keyholes as circles. You can decide to use another shape, or you use your free hand to draw your desired shape. So but in this case, we are working with the circular shape. You'll notice that I changed from the base to the top of my container. That's because the base had a bigger circles and I didn't want it to be bigger. I just wanted a moderate circle. So depending on what you're using to mark out your circles, you can have multiple keyholes instead. I just had 5 on this. If you're using something bigger, you can have just 4. It depends on what you want. You can just decide to just mark 3, one at the mid, 2 to the side. So what I'll do now is to go on and then just stitch around the circles which I've marked. So I've done that. Okay, I actually used a thread that matches my fabric. I used the black thread, so it is not so visible. So while doing yours, also use a thread that matches to your fabric. Reasons being that it's going to hide whatever you have there. You don't want to use a thread that is not matching to your fabric. So what we want to do next is to open this up. So I'm going to just open one of these and then go ahead and do the others later on. So I'm just going to cut around this. You need to be careful to not cut into your stitch lines, and just take this gently around the part which you have stitched down. Okay, so this is what I have for one. I'll go ahead and repeat the same thing on the other. So this is what it looks like after I finish. Now we're going to be closing this down using a bias. So what I'll do first is to open up my bias and then fold it down to close the rough edge of the bias, and then I'm going to stitch this down. So you're going to be careful, you need to be patient while you're stitching this down. Just take this gently, stitch around it. You can just use the head of your machine and just do this gently. Try not to, especially if you're pedaling, it's going to go off point, like go off where you're supposed to stitch this down. So you need to be careful, be patient with it while you're doing it, and it will turn out looking nice. So you're just going to stitch around this, and then when you get to the end where you're going to also fold up your bias, fold up the rough edge of your bias also, and then stitch it down. So I've stitched it at the back. What I'm going to do is to just send in the bias like so to the front. So you can stitch from your front to the back, but I'm stitching from the back to the front. Okay, so you can just stitch it this way. All right, and then you fold up your bias at the other side and go ahead and stitch it down also. All right, so this is what it looks like after I finish. See how fine and neat that looks. So go ahead and repeat the same process for the other four. Take your time, fold that properly, and you're going to have this looking nice. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing all of them. See how nice this is looking. It looks good. Very good. I was actually happy with the outcome of this. Now for the back, I've gone ahead to fix my zip to the back of the top. See, I'm just opening this up, so you need to be careful with your while fixing your zip so that you don't stitch into the teeth of your zip. Okay, so this is what it looks like after I finish. Now I'm going to join the shoulders of my piece together. Remember, we have that opened up, so you're going to align the shoulders together, and then you're going to use one. So you're either going to take the lining of the front or the lining of your back piece to wrap up the other ones. So just watch how I'm wrapping this. I'm going to just take one piece of this, ensure that they are placed properly. You don't want, when after stitching the shoulder, you have one extending out. So pin that while you're placing them together. Ensure you're pinning that properly. After that, go ahead and stitch it down by half of an inch and repeat the same process for the other shoulder. So I finished doing that. After that, I'm going ahead to just join the sides of my top together. So take the measurement you have around there at the bust and then join it together. So this is what it looks like after I finish. So the last thing we're working on is the sleeve. So I've gone ahead to draft out a basic sleeve for this. If you don't know how to draft out a basic sleeve, let me know in the comment section, and then I'm going to put out a video on that. So for my sleeve, I didn't add any seam allowances to this. So remember, we're working with a puff sleeve, and the length I have here is 10 inches. So depending on how long you want yours to appear, you can go ahead and make it bigger. So at the base now, I'm just going to divide what I have here into 4 places. So I had 6 inches as the width at the base. I just divided that into 4 places, and I'm going ahead to rule lines, and then I mark that out. I will cut this out. We're going to be slashing and spreading this on our fabric piece in order to give us the volume we need. So this is the fabric I'll be using for the sleeve. What I'll do is to fold this into 2. So I've measured this out, and it's going to work for both sleeves I need. Remember, I'm using a sleeve length of 10 inches. So I just folded this down into 4, and I have one part of this closed. Remember, our sleeves comes closed. Now I'm going ahead to place my pattern on top of it, starting from the one I had one, and I'm separating it from the next one by 4 inches. So depending on how puffy you want, if you want your sleeve to be really puffy, you can use 5 inches, 6 inches, like use more distance between them, but it depends on the quantity of fabric you have. So I finished placing all 4 pieces of this, I will just go ahead and cut out the part I will not be needing for this. So I'm just going to open up this part so that we have two pieces of this, and I'll open this up and show you what we have. So ensure to make a notch at the midpoint of your sleeve. So this is what it looks like after I finish. Now for the end of our sleeve, we'll be having elastic. So for this casing, go ahead and fold up those ends. Okay, ensure you have enough space for elastic to pass through. I'm gonna ahead to do that for both pieces of the sleeve. This is what it looks like. Okay, so we want to fix our elastic to this, right? Now for this elastic, to get the measurement of the elastic, what you'll be needing is the measurement, that is the circumference of where the sleeve is ending. If it's stopping at your elbow, if it's stopping at your wrist, in case you're using a long sleeve for this, you just take the measurement around that point. Okay, so take that measurement around that point and then you add 1 inch for ease to that. So in this case, I'm using 11 inches for this because the sleeve stops around just a little bit above the elbow point. I just took 11 inches, so I added 1 inch for ease, and I'm going to use that to cut out two pieces of this. Okay, and after doing that, I will take my safety pin and I will use that to pass this into this point.
Okay, so I finished doing that and I just stitched it down. So I've closed down the side of my sleeve using 1 inch. Remember I said I didn't add any allowance for seam allowance, but because we had access to this, 1 inch works perfectly. Now I'm placing my sleeve to the top. I'm placing the armhole area firstly, like for them to match. You're going to match them at that point, pin it down. Now the notch part which we marked for the center front, you place it to the top and then you go ahead and just place it, make little pleats on your sleeve and go ahead and stitch around it.
So this is what it looks like after I finish making little pleats on my sleeve. So if you want your sleeve to be longer, you can go ahead and do that. So this brings us to the end of this tutorial. If you're here at the end of this video and you've not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Let me know in the comment section if this video was helpful. Please give this video a thumbs up. Thank you for always coming to watch my videos. See you in the next one. Bye.